everyone, I'm Tanya Thompson. I'm a licensed realtor with Clark Premier Realty Group in the state of Maryland. Thank you so much for joining me for this week's episode of Talk of the Town. This week we'll be talking about what it takes to write a competitive offer in this market. Just a little background on the competitiveness of this market. It's driven by the fact that there's low inventory, meaning there are not very many homes for sale, and low interest rates. And so not having many homes for sale means that when a home does go for sale, the buyers who are looking in that neighborhood and in that price range flock to that property, and many offers are received within hours of it being listed. Low interest rates means that buyers are qualified for higher dollar amounts to purchase. That also means that if they were to stay at the same dollar amount that they would have been approved at a higher interest rate, that they would have a lower monthly payment. So it's a really good time to get into the market as a first-time home buyer because you can buy more property with less money. So that being said, what can you do as a buyer to have your offer stand out? There are 5 things that will make your offer competitive, or 5 elements of an offer that can be competitive. So the first is the purchase price. So if a home is listed at $250,000 and you want to be really competitive, you could offer more than what they're asking. That automatically makes you stand out from those people who want to offer less or offer what they are asking exactly. So in this market, we've seen homes go for $10,000 or $20,000 over what they're asking. So you might want to start with looking at your budget, and if you are pre-approved at a dollar amount of $300,000, perhaps starting your search in the $250,000 range, so you will have leverage when it's time for you to make your offer. If you're looking at homes that are $300,000 and you're pre-approved at $300,000, you're not going to have the leverage to offer more than what's being asked. The second element of what will make your offer competitive is if you're asking for closing help from the sellers. So if the home is listed at $250,000 and you offer them $260,000, but then you come back and ask them for seller help of $10,000, did you really offer them more money? I think not. So what would make it competitive is if you offered them $260,000 and said, I'll pay all of my own closing costs. So that is helpful to know in advance if you will need the seller's help. There are programs that allow people to get assistance from the state or from other organizations. So if you have a loan officer, you should have a conversation with your loan officer concerning how you can get your closing costs paid without asking the seller, because that's really an important part of the equation when it comes to writing a competitive offer. The third element of a competitive offer would be, how much is your earnest money deposit? So when an offer is written, the buyer writes a check to the title company. Now the title company will perform the title search, but it also holds this earnest money deposit as a good faith down payment almost to say, this is how much I am willing to put up front to purchase this home. So how is an earnest money deposit different from a down payment? So an earnest money deposit is the money that you are willing to put on the line when you put an offer on a home. So when you write an offer on a $250,000 home for $260,000 and you make an earnest money deposit of 1% of your purchase price. Now, in the past, people have been able to buy homes with earnest money deposits as low as $500 or $100. In this market, you need to be competitive, and it's at least 1%. And in some instances, listing agents will say that they want earnest money deposits of certain percentages up to 2 or 2.5. So that is one thing that you do need to keep in mind. And so why does this matter? The earnest money deposit is the money that will go to the seller if you decide to back out for a reason that's not written in the contract. So like the contract has contingencies, and so if something happens, you are legally able to back out and get your earnest money deposit back. But if you choose to back out just because you found another home or because you got cold feet about having a mortgage, The earnest money deposit is the amount of money that the seller would be able to keep if you just backed out. So what that says is, if you're willing to put up an earnest money deposit of $2,600, that you are more invested in making sure that the deal closes. And so the sellers will look at how much you're invested in making sure that the deal closes, so that they can use that as a way to gauge how serious you are about buying their home. Because the sellers can't move on to their next home until this sale is completed. So it's really important to them to know how invested are you in the situation. The third element of what makes your offer competitive are the contingencies. And so typical contingencies are financing. If you need to get a loan, you have to get approved for a loan. If you don't get approved for a loan, then you are able to back out and still get your earnest money deposit back. Typically, it's written in the contract the number of days you have to apply for a loan, and it's also written in the contract the number of days you have to be approved for a loan. The next contingency that is typically very standard is the appraisal. So if you were to put an offer on a $260,000 home, many times your lender will require that there is an appraisal to make sure that the home is valued at the amount that you will be paying. So if the appraisal comes back at $255,000, either the seller will have to come down on their price to $255,000, or you will have to come up with $5,000 to cover the difference between the amount that the lender will allow you to borrow and the purchase price that's in the contract. So if you have an appraisal contingency and the sellers are not 100% sure about the home's ability to appraise for that amount, it would make them less likely to accept your offer. So in this competitive market, people are offering way over list. So the house listed at $250, you offer them $275. Is it worth $275? That's the question. So when the appraisal comes back at $260, who's going to cover the $15,000? Is it going to be the seller, or is it going to be you? So that is one of the contingencies that the seller would be considering when they look at the offer and they say, well, you offered $275. I don't believe the home is going to appraise at $275. So that's the second contingency. The third contingency is inspection. Now, the buyer always pays for the inspection. They get to choose the inspector, and the inspection happens. Once the inspection happens, issues are reported to the lender. They are also reported to you. If the house needs a new roof or a new HVAC, or if it needs new electrical system, someone has to cover that, or you get to back out and get your earnest money deposit. So if you have an inspection contingency, you can say, we need to have these things repaired, or we will back out and get our money back. Now, if you don't put an inspection contingency and you want to have an inspection for your information, and you find that the home needs a roof, that means that you will continue to have to purchase the home and put a new roof on it yourself. Or you can not put an inspection contingency at all and not have an inspection at all. You could just go through with the purchase, buy the home, and discover that it needs a new roof. In that case, you would need to put a new roof on the home. So unless you're like one of those VIP superstar clients who can afford to replace major systems and roofs, it's not advisable to go into a situation where you are foregoing the inspection. Occasionally, homeowners do have pre-sale inspections that they will share with buyers. However, that's not very common. So it would be in the best interest of the buyer to make sure that they are fully aware of everything that's going on in the home, and that they are aware of any liabilities or situations that could arise in the future. So when you're talking to your realtor, you could just go over these types of contingencies and decide which ones, if any, you are willing to waive. So you may be willing to waive the appraisal contingency because you know what the homes will appraise for, and because you feel like the difference between what it appraised for and what you have offered is not that great. However, it's totally up to you. Your realtor will come to a point where they have to just follow your instructions, and they will give you guidance, but as well, like, you get to make the final decision. So after contingencies, the last variable that makes your offer competitive or not is the closing date. So occasionally owners have to sell their home and then buy another home. So in that case, because it's a competitive market, it could take a little while. So they may ask for a 60-day rent back, or they may ask for an extended time before closing. So if you are flexible in your ability to close later, then that is more favorable to the seller. Or there are occasions when the seller has already been able to purchase another home and they want to move on. And so they may want you to close quickly. So typically those type of issues or information is disclosed, or your real estate agent will contact the listing agent to find out what is the most preferable closing date for the seller. And in that case, you would want to write your offer to be as close to what the seller is asking for as their closing date. So those are the 5 things that make up a competitive offer, or that would make your offer more competitive. A lot of it comes from a lot of ways that you can be sure that your offer is competitive is to know the market. That means that you're looking at the comps to know what is typical for seller concessions in that area, to know if the home has had a pre-sale inspection. Those are the types of information that you would want your real estate agent to get for you and to provide you with, so that you can make an educated decision on how you will formulate your offer. And so once you put your offer together, your realtor will work on that, and then you will submit it to the listing agent. And hopefully you've made an offer that is competitive, and then you'll be able to have a ratified contract and go through the process of buying your home. Now, I just hope that this has been helpful and informational to those who are in the market right now looking for a home. If you need any help or assistance, don't hesitate to call Clark Premier Realty Group. We would love to help you.